Admiral Vexthor of the Galactic Concordat stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn, studying the holographic display of what appeared to be an unremarkable human mining outpost on asteroid HD 379. His silver-scaled skin reflected the soft blue light of the tactical displays as his 6 eyes blinked in sequence, processing the sensor data. Another primitive operation, his second in command. Commander Zara noted with characteristic disdain. Their technology is barely past fusion drives. I don't understand why High Command insists on monitoring these backwater colonies. Vexthor's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The Concordat had encountered many species in its 10,000 years of existence, and they all followed predictable patterns of development. Humans, however, had always seemed odd. Their advancement appeared erratic, almost deliberately inconsistent. "Launch the probe drones," he ordered. Standard observation protocol. The drones emerged from the Eternal Dawn's launch tubes, their crystalline bodies designed to be virtually undetectable. They had used this method countless times to study primitive species, gathering data before deciding whether to initiate contact or simply add the world to their vast catalog of potential future acquisitions. As the drones approached the asteroid, something unexpected happened. A slight distortion, barely noticeable, rippled through space. The drones suddenly stopped transmitting. "Signal lost," reported the sensor officer, her tendrils writhing in confusion. No malfunction detected. They simply disappeared. Vexthor's spine ridges stiffened. In 3 centuries of service, he had never seen probe drones simply vanish. Full scan of the asteroid. Maximum power. The results made no sense. The mining operation's energy signature was exactly what they expected. Fusion reactors, basic matter processors, nothing remarkable. But there was something else, something that registered as merely background radiation unless you knew exactly what to look for. "Impossible," Zara whispered, her scales shifting to a pale blue of disbelief. "Those energy patterns, they're quantum encrypted." Before Vexthor could respond, the mining operation began to change. The crude structures seemed to shimmer and dissolve, revealing something entirely different beneath. Where moments ago stood primitive mining equipment, now rose sleek, advanced installations that their sensors could barely comprehend. A communication request pinged their systems. The holographic display crackled to life, revealing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform, unlike any they had seen before. "Admiral Vexthor," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made his scales ripple. "I am Director Sarah Chen of the Terran Strategic Defense Initiative. We've been expecting you." "Impossible." Vexthor found himself repeating Zora's words. "Your species barely has interplanetary travel. Your colonies are primitive. Your technology is exactly what we wanted you to see." Chen interrupted, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Did you really think humanity would advertise its true capabilities to a galaxy full of potential threats? We learned that lesson from our own history." As if to emphasize her point, new signatures began appearing on their tactical display. Hidden installations across the asteroid field were dropping their camouflage, revealing a complex network of defense platforms and ships that had been invisible moments before. "But our surveys," Zora protested, "decades of observation, were exactly what we allowed you to observe," Chen replied. "Every primitive mining operation, every struggling colony, every piece of apparently crude technology, all carefully crafted theater. We needed to understand how the Concordat treats those it considers inferior." Vexthor's tactical mind raced as he reassessed everything he thought he knew about humanity. The apparent inconsistencies in their development, the peculiar gaps in their technological progress. It hadn't been random at all. It had been deliberate misdirection on a species-wide scale. "Why reveal yourselves now?" he asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. Chen's expression hardened. "Because you're not the only ones who've been gathering data, Admiral. We've watched how the Concordat handles primitive species. The forced integrations, the cultural erasure, the technological subjugation, all in the name of galactic stability. We decided it was time to change the rules of the game. As she spoke, more installations were revealing themselves across the asteroid field. What had appeared to be a simple mining operation was transforming into one of the most sophisticated military installations Vexthor had ever seen. This isn't just a revelation, Admiral. It's a demonstration. Humanity isn't interested in being another entry in your catalog of potential conquests. We're offering you a choice. Recognize us as equals and engage in genuine diplomatic relations, or discover exactly why we've spent the last century preparing for this moment. The implied threat was clear, but it was the implications that truly chilled Vexthor to his core. If humans had hidden this single installation so completely, what else had they concealed? How many other primitive colonies were elaborate facades? How much of humanity's apparent technological development was carefully crafted deception? As he stared at the transformed asteroid field, Vexthor realized that the Concordat hadn't been studying humanity. Humanity had been studying them, testing them, preparing for this very moment. And now, the true first contact was about to begin. The Concordat High Council chamber erupted into chaos as Admiral Vexthor's report played on the central holographic display. The massive crystalline dome, usually a place of measured debate and careful diplomacy, now echoed with the alarmed voices of 100 different species. Supreme Counselor Ixal, their chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's lights, raised all four arms for silence. Admiral Vexthor, are you absolutely certain about these findings? The Admiral's holographic form nodded grimly. The humans haven't just hidden their true capabilities. They've orchestrated the most elaborate deception I've ever encountered. Every seemingly primitive colony, every apparently crude spacecraft, every piece of outdated technology, it was all carefully designed to make us underestimate them. Impossible. Counselor Myrak's tentacles writhed in agitation. Our deep space monitoring stations would have detected. They're gone, Vexthor interrupted. All of them. Every monitoring station in human space went dark simultaneously an hour ago. But here's the truly disturbing part. When we checked the quantum-encrypted logs, we discovered they've been compromised for years. The data we've been receiving was exactly what the humans wanted us to see. A new hologram materialized in the chamber center. A map of known space. Red dots began appearing, spreading like a virus across the display. These are confirmed locations where human installations have dropped their camouflage in the last hour. They're not just in their territory. They're everywhere. Hidden in asteroid fields, disguised as space debris, masked as primitive outposts. They've built an entire shadow network right under our sensors. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Concordat, which had prided itself on being the most advanced civilization in known space, had been thoroughly outmaneuvered by a species they'd considered barely worth monitoring. What are their demands? Ixal asked, their voice unnaturally steady. They call it the Transparency Protocol, Vexthor replied. Full diplomatic recognition, immediate cessation of all covert surveillance of their space, and this is the most significant, a complete review of how the Concordat handles first contact with developing civilizations. Myrak's color shifted to deep purple with rage. They dare to dictate terms to us. The Concordat has maintained galactic stability for 10,000 years. We've uplifted countless species, guided them toward proper civilization. You mean subjugated them? A new voice cut through the chamber. The holograms flickered, and suddenly Director Chen's image stood among them, her presence as unexpected as it was impossible. The Council's quantum-encrypted communications network was supposed to be impenetrable. How dare you breach this secure channel? Myrak began, but Chen's calm voice cut through his protest. The same way we've breached every other system you considered secure. We've watched you, learned from you, and yes, judged you. For every civilization you've uplifted, we've counted the cultural traditions destroyed. The indigenous technology suppressed. The societies restructured to match your definition of proper civilization. Chen's image walked through the holographic map, each step highlighting different sectors of space. Did you really think humanity would announce its true capabilities to a galaxy dominated by an organization with such a track record? We learned from Earth's history. When technologically advanced civilizations encounter less developed ones, the results are rarely beneficial for the latter. You speak of deception and surveillance. Ixal noted, yet you've done exactly what you accuse us of. The difference, Chen replied, is that we didn't interfere. We watched, we learned, and we prepared. We developed our technology in secret, built our defenses, and waited to see if the Concordat could change. If you could learn to respect the right of other species to develop on their own terms. The map suddenly shifted, showing hundreds of new signatures, hidden human installations, and ships revealing themselves across every sector of known space. This isn't just about humanity anymore. We've made contact with other species you deemed primitive, helped them hide their true potential, just as we hid ours. That mining colony you dismissed on Proxima B. They've developed quantum computing that rivals your best systems. The simple agrarian society on Kepler 186f. They've mastered biological engineering in ways your scientists haven't even theorized. The council members stared in growing horror as more and more signatures appeared on the map. Chen's voice carried a note of finality as she continued. The galaxy is far more complex than your careful categorizations suggest. The choice before you is simple. Adapt to a new reality where multiple civilizations develop on their own terms, or face the consequences of your rigidity. You're proposing to overturn 10,000 years of stable governance, Ixal observed. The chaos that would result would be preferable to the stagnation of forcing every species into your predetermined mold, Chen countered. We're not asking for the Concordat's dissolution. We're demanding its evolution. The era of unilateral uplifting is over. Welcome to a galaxy where humanity and its allies step out of the shadows. As if to emphasize her point, new signals began appearing on the Council's private channels. Species after species, long categorized as primitive or developing, were dropping their facades. The carefully ordered galaxy the Concordat had presided over was transforming before their eyes, revealing a far more diverse and complex reality than they had ever imagined. The age of deception was ending. The real question was, could the Concordat adapt to a galaxy where they were no longer the undisputed masters of civilization? As the council chamber erupted into fresh debate, the answer to that question would reshape the future of known space. The eternal dawn shuddered as another volley of human weapons fire impacted its quantum shields. Admiral Vexthor had seen many battles in his centuries of service, but nothing like this. The Concordat's 7th Fleet, pride of their military might, was being systematically dismantled by forces they barely understood. Multiple hull breaches on decks 3 through 7, reported Commander Zara, her scales now a pale gray of exhaustion. Their weapons, they're not just piercing our shields, they're bypassing them completely. Vexthor watched as another Concordat cruiser fell out of formation, its engines dark. The human ships moved with impossible precision, each attack perfectly coordinated. What had started as a show of force to remind humanity of the Concordat's military superiority had turned into a nightmare. New contact. The sensor officer's voice cracked with panic. Massive energy signature. It's coming from the sun. All eyes turned to the tactical display as something emerged from the corona of the system's star. A human vessel, larger than anything they'd seen before, literally surfing the solar flares. Its hull glowed with absorbed plasma, channeling the star's energy in ways that defied Concordat physics. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the TSS Prometheus, a familiar voice echoed through their command channel. I see the Concordat High Council chose the hard way. Disappointing, but not unexpected. The massive human ship's presence changed everything. It moved through space like a predator, solar plasma still crackling along its hull. The Concordat fleet's energy readings fluctuated wildly. Their sensors couldn't even maintain a lock on the vessel. How? Vexthor found himself asking. How did you hide all of this? The same way we've hidden everything else, Chen replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. By understanding that the best place to hide is often in plain sight. That primitive solar research station your ships passed last month. This was it. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see. A crude attempt at solar energy collection. The Prometheus unleashed its first attack. It wasn't an explosion or energy beam, but rather a carefully controlled solar flare, guided by technology that made Concordat scientists' best theories look like children's drawings. 3 Concordat ships found themselves caught in an artificial corona, their shields useless against the fundamental forces of stellar matter. Formation Delta, Vexthor ordered, trying to reorganize his fleet. But the human vessels had already anticipated this move. They weren't just fighting with superior technology. They were fighting with perfect information. Your tactical protocols were compromised decades ago, Chen explained, as if reading his thoughts. Every strategy in your database has been analyzed, countered, and improved upon. We didn't just study your technology. We studied how you think. The battle continued to unfold like a complex dance, where only one side knew the steps. Human ships seemed to phase through solid matter, their quantum drives making conventional space combat tactics obsolete. Their weapons didn't just destroy. They rewrote the laws of physics on a local scale. Admiral, Zara called out, her voice steady despite the chaos. We're detecting similar energy signatures from every star system in 100 light-year radius. They're all activating simultaneously. The tactical display transformed into a nightmare of red warnings. Hidden human installations were powering up throughout Concordat space, each one leveraging stellar phenomena in ways their scientists had deemed impossible. They hadn't just built a military force. They'd turned the fundamental forces of the universe into weapons. The Concordat's military doctrine is based on the assumption that you can control space through superior firepower. Chen's voice continued, calm amidst the destruction. We chose a different approach. Why build bigger guns when you can harness the power of stars themselves? Vexthor watched as another wave of solar plasma, precisely controlled by the Prometheus, carved through his fleet's formation. The human ships moved through the artificial solar storm like fish through water, their technology perfectly adapted to conditions that would melt Concordat vessels instantly. All ships, fall back to. His order was cut short as the Eternal Dawn's quantum core suddenly went silent. Around him, other Concordat vessels experienced the same phenomenon. Their mighty engines, the pride of their civilization, simply stopped responding. Your quantum cores are impressive technology, Chen noted, but they're based on principles we mastered and moved beyond decades ago. Right now, every quantum core in your fleet is being held in a state of temporal suspension. Not destroyed, just paused. The revelation hit Vexthor like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just matched Concordat technology. They'd understood it so completely that they could control it at will. Every assumption about human technological development had been wrong, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. This is your final warning, Chen announced, her voice now reaching every ship in the Concordat fleet. Return to your space. Reconsider the Council's decision. The galaxy is changing, whether you accept it or not. The only question is whether the Concordat will change with it, or be left behind as a relic of an obsolete order. As his mighty fleet hung powerless in space, Admiral Vexthor realized that this wasn't just a military defeat, it was the end of an era. The Concordat's assumption of technological supremacy, their right to guide the development of other species, had been built on a foundation that was crumbling before his eyes. In the depths of the Concordat's most secure research facility, Dr. Nixis stared at the holographic data streams with all 4 of her eyes wide in astonishment. As the Concordat's leading xenotechnologist, she had spent decades studying human development. Now, every theory she had developed was being systematically shattered. It's not just their technology, she explained to the gathered emergency council, her tentacles gesturing at the complex displays. It's their entire approach to scientific development. We've been so focused on their apparent technological progression that we missed the bigger picture. The holograms shifted, showing what appeared to be a primitive human mining colony. With a gesture, Nixis peeled back layers of carefully crafted deception, revealing the quantum research facility hidden beneath. They didn't just hide their advances, they created an entirely fictional technological timeline. Every primitive human installation we've studied has been a carefully constructed facade. But here's what's truly remarkable. Each facade was designed to fail in specific ways, teaching us exactly what they wanted us to learn. Supreme Counselor Ixal leaned forward, their crystalline form refracting the holographic light. Explain. Take this mining facility, Nixis continued. We detected radiation leaks that matched exactly what we'd expect from poorly shielded fusion reactors. But the leaks weren't accidental. They were precisely calculated to mask the quantum signatures of their true power systems. They weren't just hiding. They were actively feeding our prejudices about their technological capabilities. The display shifted again, showing hundreds of similar installations across human space. Every piece of primitive human technology we encountered was designed to reinforce our assumptions. We thought we were studying them, but they were conducting a massive psychological experiment on us. To what end? Ixal demanded, their voice carrying an edge of uncharacteristic uncertainty. To understand how we think, a new voice answered. Director Chen's hologram materialized in the center of the chamber, causing several council members to recoil. More specifically, to understand how your civilization handles those you consider inferior. Before anyone could respond to the intrusion, Chen gestured, and the facility's displays transformed. Suddenly, they were looking at records from dozens of Concordat first contact scenarios, but from a perspective they'd never considered. You call it uplifting, Chen continued, her voice neutral but carrying an undercurrent of steel. We call it cultural assassination. We watched you integrate the Zorn Collective, stripping away their unique quantum biological technology because it didn't fit your understanding of proper development. We saw how you guided the Meridian Axis, forcing them to abandon their crystal-based computing because it didn't match Concordat standards. Nixis felt her tentacles curl in discomfort as she recognized her own reports in the display. How many times had she recommended corrective technological guidance for species that developed along different paths than the Concordat? But that's not even the most interesting part, Chen added, walking through the holographic displays as if she were physically present. While you were busy forcing other civilizations to conform to your standards, you missed something extraordinary. They were evolving in ways your rigid technological hierarchy couldn't comprehend. The displays shifted again, showing hidden networks of communication and collaboration between supposedly primitive species. We weren't the only ones hiding our true capabilities. That simple agricultural society you've been monitoring. They've developed biological computing that surpasses your quantum systems. The primitive spacefaring race you've been preparing to guide. They've mastered dimensional engineering that makes your faster-than-light travel look obsolete. Impossible, one of the council members whispered, but Nixis was already seeing the patterns. The inconsistencies in her data, the unexplained anomalies. They weren't errors. They were glimpses of something far more complex than the Concordat's rigid developmental models could explain. Your civilization's greatest weakness, Chen observed, is your unshakable belief in your own superiority. You've spent so long believing you represent the peak of technological advancement that you've become blind to alternative paths of development. Humanity didn't just hide our progress. We created a safe space for other civilizations to develop free from your interference. The implications hit Nixis like a physical blow. The Concordat hadn't been maintaining galactic order. They had been suppressing a multiverse of potential technological and cultural development paths. And humanity, far from being primitive, had somehow recognized this truth and created a shadow network of genuine technological exchange and cooperation. "We're not here to destroy the Concordat," Chen continued, her hologram now standing directly before Ixel. "We're here to show you what you've been missing. The galaxy isn't a hierarchy with your civilization at the top. It's a network of unique developmental paths, each with its own validity and potential." As if to emphasize her point, new data streams began flowing across the displays. Information about technologies the Concordat had never imagined, development paths they had dismissed as dead ends, and civilizations that had been quietly evolving in ways that defied their careful categorizations. "The choice before you is simple," Chen concluded. "Continue believing in your own supremacy and face the combined might of civilizations you thought you understood, or open yourselves to a new way of thinking about galactic development. The era of enforced conformity is over. Welcome to the age of technological diversity." 1 year after the revelation that shook the galaxy, the Great Hall of the new Galactic Assembly bore little resemblance to the old Concordat Council Chamber, where once stood rigid rows of seats arranged in careful hierarchical order. Now curved rings of diverse spaces accommodated the unique needs of each species. The crystalline dome above had been transformed into a living display of multiple technological approaches working in harmony. Admiral Vexthor, now serving as the Concordat's representative to the Assembly, found himself seated beside Director Chen. His scales had taken on a more subdued hue in recent months, reflecting the humility that had replaced his former certainty about the galaxy's proper order. "Still uncomfortable?" Chen asked, noting his slight shifting in the adaptive seat designed by one of the formerly primitive species. "Adjusting," he replied, watching as representatives from dozens of civilizations filed into the chamber. Some moved through conventional space, others seemed to phase between dimensions, while still others existed as pure energy fields. Each demonstrated a unique path of development that the Concordat would have once tried to correct. "The latest survey results are in," Chen said, activating a personal holographic display. "The number of species revealing their true technological capabilities has exceeded our initial estimates. It seems your Concordat's presence inspired quite a bit of technological camouflage." The display showed the transformation that had swept through known space. The rigid technological hierarchy the Concordat had enforced for millennia had given way to a complex web of interconnected development paths. Species that had appeared primitive were revealing advances that approached problems from entirely new angles. "The Meridian Axis has agreed to share their crystal computing breakthroughs," Vexthor noted, still amazed by how much his former adversaries had hidden. "Combined with Concordat quantum theory, we're seeing computational possibilities we never imagined." "That's the point we were trying to make," Chen smiled. "True advancement doesn't come from forcing everyone down the same path. It comes from allowing different approaches to cross-pollinate." The assembly chamber hummed with energy as the session began. The first speaker was a being of pure consciousness housed in a crystalline matrix, a development path the Concordat would have once dismissed as impossible. "The great exchange continues to exceed expectations." The being's thoughts resonated through the chamber. "The combination of human quantum mechanics, Zorn biotechnology, and Concordat energy manipulation has opened new frontiers in dimensional engineering. We are evolving faster together than any of us could have alone." Vexthor watched as presentation after presentation demonstrated the explosive growth that had followed the end of enforced technological conformity. Species that the Concordat had planned to uplift were now teaching them new ways of understanding the universe. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," he said to Chen during a brief recess. "How did humanity avoid the trap that caught the Concordat? How did you maintain such perspective?" Chen's expression grew thoughtful. "Our history taught us valuable lessons about the danger of assuming our way was the only way. When we looked to the stars, we carried those lessons with us. We saw the Concordat's actions and recognized patterns from our own past. Advanced civilizations deciding they knew best for everyone else." The chamber's displays shifted, showing the intricate network of hidden developments that had flourished under humanity's protection. "We didn't set out to create this shadow network. We just offered other species what we wished someone had offered us. the chance to develop on their own terms. And now, Vex Thor gestured to the transformed chamber. Now we all learn from each other, Chen replied. The Concordat's scientific knowledge is invaluable. It just needed to be freed from the assumption that it was the only valid path. As if to emphasize her point, a group of Zorn scientists entered the chamber, their quantum biological forms shifting in ways that would have once been forbidden. They were followed by representatives of a dozen other species, each demonstrating technological approaches that defied traditional classification. The galaxy was never meant to be a hierarchy, Chen continued. It's a laboratory of infinite possibility. Every species, every civilization, has something unique to contribute. The trick is learning to see the value in approaches different from your own. The session resumed with a presentation on new forms of faster-than-light travel, combining principles from multiple civilizations. Vex Thor watched in amazement as theories he had studied for centuries were transformed by insights from species his people had once dismissed as primitive. We're entering an age of true collaboration, the presenter concluded, not through enforced standards, but through the free exchange of ideas across all developmental paths. As the assembly continued, Vex Thor reflected on how completely the galaxy had changed. The Concordat's dream of uniform, controlled development had given way to something far more chaotic, but infinitely more vibrant. Species that had hidden in the shadows now stood as equals, each contributing their unique perspective to the greater whole. The age of deception was over, replaced by an era of genuine exchange and mutual respect. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy hadn't been their technology or their military might. It had been their vision of a future where different paths could coexist and enrich each other. As the session drew to a close, the crystalline dome above reflected the combined light of 1,000 different technologies working in harmony. It was, Vex Thor realized, a perfect symbol of this new age. Not a single path to the stars, but a constellation of possibilities, each shining in its own unique way.